All right. Hey, thank you so much for being here in control, Jeff, Mr. Robinson. Real pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What do you prefer? I hear a lot of people referring to you as like Jeff, but I guess I've always kind of wondered, do pro gamers and personalities and stuff like that, is that like a comfortable thing for you to be referred to as like your first name by people that you don't necessarily know?
I don't know if it's normal or not, but I have no preference at all. Like if someone calls me Control, I don't. It doesn't phase me at all. If someone calls me Jeff, or if they accidentally say Geoff or something like that, I've just never been um, too worried about that. I guess.
All right, cool. Well, unlike a lot of the other interviews that I've been doing, I'm gonna skip the generic kind of fluffy "How did you get into StarCraft?" kind of questions because you've been around for so long. You've had so many interviews like this. I think it's something that people can find easily if they wanted to know about that.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah, but I will ask some fluff because everybody loves some fluff. Um,
Sure.
you post a fair amount on your Facebook and on your Twitter about Warhammer 40k tabletop. You recently just won a major tournament. Is that correct?
Yeah. Last weekend.
Cool. Can you talk a little bit about Warhammer 40k and how you got involved in that scene and how you kind of got deeper into the competitive nature?
Sure. Warhammer for me is it happened almost simultaneously with StarCraft way back when I was 11, going on 12 years. So that's 18, more than 18 years ago. Um, I just loved the aesthetic, the alien. My friend had a couple models, and I looked at a white dwarf and was just like, "This is really cool." Obviously, back then you're not making any money at all, so it was like birthdays and Christmases. I'd get a Carnifex, or I'd get another box of Gene Stealers, or maybe mom was just feeling nice, and she was like, "You know what? Let's go take a trip to Games Workshop and pick out something cool." And it's such an expensive hobby that it was never, especially back then, it wasn't like let's go grab 5 boxes and have an army. It was like the army was slowly growing, and it just, I don't know, some mixture of that was a pressure cooker for awesome for me, because it just kind of kept building up the excitement, and I would go to the shops and read the codexes and get the white dwarfs at my bud's house, and he had a bigger collection, and his brother did too. So I would just kind of like sit there jealously and watch them paint and assemble and just love their models. Um, and that was kind of part of my childhood with StarCraft. I started off loving the aesthetic of the aliens, and then the strategy aspect of it kind of tugged me in. But I played just with my friends and just very casually for the first 5 or 6 years, and then I actually, well, yeah, 6 years, and then I had to go off to college, and I did not bring my models with me. And when I would come back, I'd play a little bit, but for the most part, they just kind of got forgotten a little bit there. Um, and then in Arizona, when we were at the Pro Gamer House for StarCraft 2, so this is like 2010. I again was just like, you know what, I loved Warhammer. That was an amazing time for me. So I would like train 10 hours a day or so. And then what did I do with that other time? Well, I bought all these models again. I went on Games Workshop website. This time, that 12-year-old had evolved to somebody with money. So I didn't buy one box. I bought like 5 of everything. And then just for like a while after that, I was not painting per se. I was assembling and then base coating them. And then it was a couple years later, we go to San Francisco, and the first thing I did was I looked up a commission place that someone recommended on my Twitter, and that was Frontline Gaming. And then these guys are some of my best friends now, and that's how I got into competitive Warhammer.
So you just mentioned Frontline Gaming there. You're on a competitive 40k team. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. You travel a little bit. You attend tournaments around the country. You've written a little bit for Frontline Gaming too. Is that also correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I travel. I would say 4 or 5 tournaments a year, and then there's a bunch local. California's got a really good Warhammer scene. And then I just, like anything else that I feel really passionate about, I've written some articles. Every morning I look at some pictures and that kind of stuff. It's a big part of my life.
So for anybody maybe like me who doesn't know much at all about the Warhammer 40k tabletop scene, is that something that you can like possibly make a career out of, or is that even something that you would be interested in?
It's very reminiscent of StarCraft Brood War for me, where there's like a very large collection of people that are extremely excited about, especially at the time, a hobby. And they would love to make it bigger and better. So there definitely are podcasts. There definitely are commission studios. My buds at Frontline Gaming, like I said, they have kind of a one stop all thing where they do everything. They're making a lot of content, but just like StarCraft Brood War, if someone was like, "Can I make a career of that?" I would look you in the eye and say, "Absolutely not," because the amount of people that play the game and spend a ton of money on it versus the amount of people that came from that and turned it into a career is, it's like a almost a mathematical impossibility. Obviously, that's exaggerating a little bit, but the point is like, no, you should never. Nobody should ever look into Warhammer to make money. It's about losing all the money that you have, but doing it in a lovingly way. The plan and the hope, just like Brood War, tentatively though, it's not like there's people militantly pursuing this, but the idea is that sure, someday there are teams with sponsorships and there are people traveling not on their dime but on somebody else's, and there are sponsored players, and who knows where it goes from there. But Warhammer, excuse me, is extremely hard to stream. It's been around for 30 years. There's a lot of people that love the crap out of it, but to make it interesting for other people, it faces all the problems that StarCraft did in terms of like accessibility, difficulty to pick up, difficulty to understand, but all of that like times 10 or 15. It's like insanely complex. It's insanely nuanced. So I think a lot of people are working towards that, but they don't have high hopes of it happening anytime soon.
So not only have you written for Frontline Gaming, but earlier in the year you were writing articles for Splice.gg, which at the time was a bit of a newer organization. How did that come to pass? And do you have any interest in writing articles, editorials on a more regular basis?
Yeah, it's interesting. My wife Anna actually introduced me to the guy that I think headed up Splice or still does. And he had mentioned that he was looking for writers. I think for Anna in particular for Heroes, but she had mentioned she could talk to me too. And he's like, sure, I'd love StarCraft as well. And that's really all it took. And then I had a couple conversations with them, and they were at the time trying to get content rolling on their social media and on their website. And it was pretty successful. They had Thorn and some others doing it as well. Pretty big names in their respective communities, and they paid pretty well for an article. I say pretty well because it's not like I was making life making money. It was more just that they were paying people for writing, which is awesome. That's what that's the standard in the mainstream, but it is not in esports. If you're writing articles, you are doing that to get your name out there or your opinion out there, but you're probably not getting paid to do it unless you are actually a journalist or hired by that website, which is again very few people. Um, but that was a way to like make a little bit of money, but also to write, which is something that I feel pretty strongly about. I'm also the kind of person that only wants to write when it like strikes me. Like I don't want I it ended up getting slowed down self-admittedly by myself just because I would write a couple big opinion pieces and then like that next week I'd be like, all right, what do I want to write about? And there wasn't much that I wanted to write about that week, so I just wouldn't. And that was kind of cool that they allowed for that flexibility. So it's just a good situation.
You've mentioned the past as well, kind of tying into that concept of writing and editorials and stuff like that. And I think you kind of just answered it by talking about how you don't want to do it every single week. But you mentioned in the past that you'd be interested in doing a sort of weekly vlog style show for your YouTube channel. Is that still something that you're interested in or have any plans for?
Yeah, I like just making content in general, but I'm kind of a quality snob in the sense that like the higher the quality and the better the production of it, the more excited I get about it. So my YouTube channel is very um, how would I say it? Like very amateur. It's very unedited. It's very raw. And that's not because I'm like so hipster cool and like, oh my god, my YouTube. It's actually just because I don't know how, and I don't want to bug Anna, and I'm not going to pay somebody to to doll up my videos a bunch. So it's kind of a work in progress, is what I guess I would say. I did a lot of vlogs for a little while, and I have no regrets. They were fun. There's no reason why I haven't done any more other than just like it doesn't strike my fancy right now. I did some movie reviews and stuff like that, and then of course my most successful videos were the ones where like some subject in StarCraft in particular happened, and then I talked a lot about that. It's more like just it's an outlet in the vacancy where I don't have state of the game anymore. I'm not an inside the game. Some of these big talk shows where I felt like I had a platform to really share my thoughts and feelings to a broad audience. I kind of just made one for myself, and it's nice. It's fun. It's not monetized at all. I haven't made a single penny off of my YouTube. I don't know how. If I did, I'd love the extra $15 or whatever. But it is fun, and I'll definitely return back to it and stuff like that. There's no conscious like I'm not doing it right now. It's just more of a like, I'm not really feeling it right now.
You were a member of your debate team in college, right? You speak pretty frequently about that when it comes up.
Yep.
And I think that experience has regularly shown itself throughout your career. You know, you talk about being regular on State of the Game, Inside the Game, and so many other different projects. With all the talk shows that you've been a part of, it seems like you really enjoy public speaking and just debating in general. Is that an accurate perception?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a big part of what makes me happy and makes me complete. Yeah.
As an older member of the esports sphere, not just StarCraft, you've been heavily criticized at times for being a member of the old boys club, quote
Hmm.
unquote. I can't really remember a time when that wasn't a thing because I've only been around since like 2012. When did you
Sure.
first see the idea of an old boys club and the idea that that affects how people can work their way through esports crop up?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's been around since 2012 or 11 or so. It's a couple years into StarCraft, and you start seeing a lot of the same names doing big projects. Um, it's just funny to me because there is no there's I mean like what they're describing, what they're critiquing, they being kind of the faceless mob is nepotism, and they're talking about how like one friend helps out another friend get another big role, and like at face value on paper, yeah, that happens absolutely. When someone like DJ Wheat's putting together another show, he's like, well, I've done a lot of content within Control, and I love the guy. Let's do that, and then let's get another pro gamer, and then people they didn't like target it specifically. It was more kind of like a vague criticism. People would, and that was kind of the funny part for me. It's like if you looked at a tournament, people are like, oh, there's the old boys club. Okay, sure. Well, what would you like different? And they're like, well, those are all my favorite commentators, but I'd like some new ones in there too. And it's like, well, that's not what was stopped there. Like because everyone there is your favorite ex producer or content or whatever, that's why they got the job. That's part of it. Sure, the other part of it is they've done that job several times. Now they're friends with the people that put it on. But they're not blocking new people. Your fanboyism, your preference is blocking new people. Like if someone's going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars putting an event on, they're not going to take that many risks. And one of the bigger risks you could take is putting up a green, fresh new commentator up there. Now those risks do get taken, and it's resulted in awesome stuff. And there's been commentators that have clawed and fought their way in there. I would think of someone like Nathanius, who, hilariously enough, a lot of people call him a part of the old boys club too now, even though he's like 23 years old, trapped in a 40-year-old body. That guy did commentary until 5 a.m. in his basement with his mic strapped to his head, and he just fought as hard as he could to show that his passion is not to be restrained, and became a mainstay commentator. And the funny thing again too for me is everyone that you would criticize of being the old boys club, Artosis, Tasteless, Day Nine back when he was doing stuff with us, and myself and others. Artosis slept in a sweaty 100-degree Korean closet with a guy named Puerto Rican who was Puerto Rican, but he was also trying to do the same thing, and he just volunteered his time in the Korean scene until he finally got a job, and now he's big. Tasteless flew himself over there with some community money from WCG back in the day, and he took up a commentating gig that I believe he didn't get paid for the first time, and then he just slept on people's floors until he was finally employed and able to make a job. Day Nine doesn't quite have the as romantic of a story. He's just so goddamn lovable that people just wanted him around everything. So he just kind of was. But everyone starts somewhere, and they get to a point where their career, their name, kind of projects forward and gets them more gigs. But that's why whenever the old boys club thing came up, it never even for 1 second hurt my feelings or made me feel bad, or any of the other people that are accused of being a part of that, because it's like, no, actually every one of those people poured blood, sweat, and tears into this. They didn't look to get money out of it at first. It just kind of happened because they just loved it so goddamn much that eventually people wanted to pay them to do it. And they're so good at it that eventually people just always wanted them there. And like where that criticism would be bad, in my opinion, is if there literally was a group of people who were like, okay, hey, look, such and such is an up and coming commentator. We need to not invite them on our shows. We need to ignore their presence. We need to publicly denounce them and just really make sure they go away so we can have all the jobs. If that kind of shit happened, whoa, then yeah, I mean, it wouldn't just be the old boys club. It'd be like the evil people club, and you should definitely burn it with fire. But as far as I know, it never did happen that way. I'm sure if someone wants to find someone saying something bad, they could. But for the most part, as an organized, we're trying to block people. Never happened. So I always just laughed. I thought it was funny. But you're right. It's been said, and it's been I've been accused of being a part of that for 6 or 7 years now.
I actually, when I was doing like my research for this, I read a post that you made on Reddit, and I think that the main topic of the post was somebody, the organizer of some league, I can't remember, I'm really sorry, but talking about how it was really hard to be a grassroots tournament organizer and have a grassroots StarCraft tournament in 2014 or something. And you commented and you said, you gave a really lengthy response with lots of cool stuff in there, but you said at one point, just ask, just ask people. And you remarked of yourself that you say yes to probably more projects than you should. And I mean, like being on the late game, talking to me right now, I think there are lots of things that I can point out where it's like, oh yeah, Jeff in Control Robinson helps out new people coming up in the scene. Is that something that you think is important to you? Is that something that you work towards? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a good subject. It's actually part of like if I had some kind of weird mission statement. I say weird just because I'm an individual, not a company or something like that. But yeah, I would say that is part of my mission statement, and that is that the long-winded. And since you asked for an interview, you're going to get the long-winded because that's who I am. The long-winded response is StarCraft and esports to a greater whole has done so much for me that I feel very deeply, very passionately that it is an incredible force that should be available to more people. I've traveled the world. I've met some of my best friends in the whole world. I'm provided for. I live very comfortably in the most expensive city in the country. I'm married to my soulmate and best friend, and they work in the industry. Like, it's just done so much for me. The list kind of goes on. And like I just said in my previous answer, I definitely worked for it. I'm not sitting here telling you that, like, I took advantage of some system and manipulated this stuff to the point where I'm in this great spot. No, I worked really hard for it, and then a lot of that hard work started to pay for itself. But the bottom line is, I just think that if you are passionate about gaming and if you're excited about entrepreneurial work and that kind of thing, then this is like the most perfect storm. It's just beautiful, but it's also one of the most confusing and inaccessible career paths you can take, because you don't go to college and get your esports degree and then get handed a job in the field or something like that. It takes really weird perfect times, and also it takes luck. It takes tenacity. It takes humility. So when people always ask me about, how do you begin to work in there, that's the first piece of advice I always give, is just ask. Always ask. And because there's so many people that just will be like, well, they'll probably say no, or I don't want to make them uncomfortable and stuff like that. And they're right. It is weird to go to someone and be like, hey, do you think I could help you with that? Or, do you, even more bold is like, hey, I noticed you were asking about such and such. I would be willing to do that for a very small fee. Like, all that stuff is uncomfortable. People don't want to ask about that. Or someone could say, I'd like to write for you, or I'd like to manage your website or your YouTube or your Twitch. They're going to be told no 9 times out of 10, or they're going to be okay. They're actually going to be told no 2 times out of 10. They're going to be ignored 7 times out of 10, and that's actually like more painful in a lot of ways, to put yourself out there and be like, hey, You don't know who I am. I really like everything you do. I'd like to help. And then they just fucking ignore you, and you're just like, hmm, I'll just swallow that. I'll just swallow my pride, because the worst thing you could then do is be like, fine, you're a Z-listed celebrity anyways, I hate you. And then, of course, you've just been flushed out. Like, they're not going to go tell anyone about it. It's just that you've outed yourself as someone that can't hack it. Like, esports is about being told no. It's about being ignored. It's about years of just raw passion carrying you forward. And then eventually there's a chance you could make a career off of it. And that is as bleak as it sounds. Like, it's becoming less so. I will say that over time, there is more um, situations for someone to just be like, I'd like that job. And they're like, okay, I don't know who you are. I don't know any of your credentials, but we need warm bodies. So here's your zero pay. And if you can make it for 2 months, we'll talk about more. Like, that's more prevalent now, and becoming more prevalent than ever before. Before, it would just be like you have to go to a company that's running in red and then ask them for, a role. And they'd be like, are you going to go crazy on us? And so it's just really hard. But yeah, like I said, it's done so much for me that my mission statement moving forward is to try to make it more accessible for more people. So part of that is mentorship and answering those questions and kind of just putting that rhetoric out there. But the other part too is trying to drive forward and grow esports and make it something that people can find different roles in. Because back when like 5 years ago, if you're like, I want to be in esports, 9 times out of 10 people were saying I want to be a pro gamer, which is take everything I just said and exacerbate it by like 100%. Like, it's impossibly harder to. Let me put it this way: of the people that have been like, I like that game, I'm going to set out to play it professionally. I want to say almost with confidence, as far as major esports go, I can't name a single person that's ever done it. And I'm sure someone's like, that's silly. I have an example, and they'll name one person, and then that'll be it. There's nobody that just set out to be a pro gamer, that, as far as I know. Most people are just like, I played this game, I fucking killed it, and then eventually people wanted to pay me. The kind of funny backlash, if you want to call it backlash, it's not really backlash, but the funny thing is, because I'm the guy that told a lot of people to ask, I'm always the joke is I'm like the first person they all ask to. They're like, okay, great. Well, hey, point me in the right direction. And I'm like, sorry, I'm not hiring. So I'm kind of like, I'm like the Cerebus guard dog of esports, where like I tell people the answer, and they're like, cool. Well, hey, can I help you with this? And I'll be like, no. And then they're like, oh. But then my messages keep going, not necessarily with me, but just don't take no as your final answer. Like, keep working at it. Esports is really hard. And like I said earlier, with my example of what these commentators did to get into the game, Nathaniel's being paid $0, staying up until the wee hours of the night with his microphone strapped to his head, commentating 5 or 6 hours at a time. That's what it takes. And he got lucky too. There's a lot of people that did the exact same thing and never made it anywhere near as far as he did. So you got to work at it. You got to have the passion. You got to ask the uncomfortable questions, and then you got to keep at it. And there's going to come a point in time, and this is the hardest part of it all, where you have to evaluate. You're like, is this worth it? Can I do it too? That's the other part. If you're like 29 years old and you got 2 kids and a wife and you're trying to pay for stuff, well, I hope you're independently wealthy, because you're not going to be making a lot of money in esports in the first couple of years. It just doesn't work that way. So, can you do it is the other question.
You are someone who's been subject to a lot of hate from portions of the community, at least. As an onlooker, I don't think I've ever really understood why necessarily. I think that sometimes you can be like an abrasive personality, but there are lots of other people who are abrasive personalities. Destiny springs to mind, mainly, who people love that. In a video from October 2014, you talked about how even you were hired the previous year in 2013 to be a caster at BlizzCon, and somebody mentioned to you, "Oh yeah, we got some heat because we hired you for this position." Yeah. That's like, that seems very strange to me. Like, that's a different level of, I don't know, community perception. Why do you think you're subject to that kind of scrutiny or that kind of hate from those portions of the community? Why you and not maybe somebody else?
Well, I mean, so there's a couple different angles to take at this. I think it's also an interesting subject, one that I've obviously, it's me, so I've been intimately close to for a long time. But going back to the comments about that BlizzCon, that was funny actually. Yeah, they didn't get hate or something like that. They had people that said we don't want to hire him inside of Blizzard. He's too much of a wild card, or he's too vulgar and that kind of stuff. He makes too many jokes. Um, but they ultimately just like voiced that opinion, like they were the down votes, and then ultimately the up votes won. Because that's kind of how Blizzard works too. By the way, it's not like one person making all the choices or anything like that. It's a bunch of respected groups speaking on something, if as long as they're pertinent. Like obviously the WoW team is not talking about the StarCraft 2 commentators, but so that was funny because back then, and understandably, I was doing every single home story cup where I would be a total clown on stream because that's what they wanted. DreamHack was in full force, so every month was a DreamHack, and DreamHack would look me in the eye and say, "We want you to be the loose cannon, the guy that's going to make this interesting and fun." And that's why I kind of evolved into the I'm just on the analyst panel. Nobody thought I was a bad commentator per se. It's just that they thought my value was better felt loosening up a panel and talking about it. And the funny irony about this is that I would hear from other esports down the road, this is years later, but they'd be like, yeah, I mean, we model our desk off of that dynamic. Like, we were setting trends back then. It was really nice. Like, a lot of other esports didn't want the analyst desk to be four people in straitjackets with their jaws wired shut, talking about the analytics and the numbers and being boring. They wanted personalities up there. A lot of that was because of the influence of what I did. That's going to sound conceited, guys, but that's what I was told from like CS:GO and Dota and these different scenes. And then that BlizzCon happened, and that was the first like real punch to my gut and ego a little bit because they hired me, but they like for whatever reason the guy that hired me, like I said, made it very clear. He's like, "Yep, there's a lot of people here who don't want you there," and I'm like, "Okay, so what do you want me to do with that?" And he's like, "Well, I just want you to do a great job," and I'm like, "I'm like, what an idiot! I'm going to do the best job I possibly can. Why would you tell talent that there's people inside this company that don't want you there? Like that doesn't. There's no cool underdog story there where like finally I stand on my desk and I'm like speaking to the audience and people are tearing their shirts and renting. Like it's like it doesn't happen that way. So that was silly. It upset me. And then to make it even worse, the next year I was not invited to BlizzCon, and that was for a lot of the same reasons. The same groups just did not like the way I conducted myself at these gigs that told me to conduct myself exactly that way. So I made that video, and a lot of people from Blizzard, because they're awesome, compassionate people, kind of reached out and were like, "Hey, we just want to explain ourselves." And that was basically what they explained. It's like a lot of them were just like, "I actually really do like the stuff you do, but I hope you can understand why such and such group would not necessarily want that on their super mega professional stream." And my answer was always the same. It was always like, "Well, it's just ridiculous that anyone would think that's the only thing I can do. I've also done IEMs and other professional streams where they say, 'Hey Jeff, tone it down a little bit,' and then I do." At the previous BlizzCon, I was not making jokes off of the wazoo and stuff. So it just felt bad. And then the sweet, sweet divine justice of that was that was the BlizzCon where they had hours and hours of dead air and bad, like they just could not get a connection going for 20 minutes at a time. And everyone came back and was like, "Man, we could have used Jeff there." And I was like, "You're goddamn right, you could have." So it's more funny. But anyways, on to the broader subject of why does it seem like I get so much hate and stuff like that. You're not the first to say that or ask about that, and it's to be honest, this question is a little bit more relevant like 2 years ago, I would say, where I was on shows and I was stating my opinion and I was more brazen, and I did get a lot of hate from a lot of people. I think it's a mixture of things, some of it boring and some of it exciting. I guess the boring parts are just that I was on the show, State of the Game. I was then on the next show, Inside the Game. If I wasn't on those things, I treated my Twitter not as like a fake PR factory of my face. It was actually my raw emotions. When I went on Reddit, I did not filter myself very much there either. I would, if someone was like such and such a stupid, I'd respond like, "You sound stupid, you idiot," and then if you're a public figure, that's not the right way to go. So I learned that over time, not necessarily because they're not an idiot, they probably were, but because when I say it, people get a lot more upset, and it leaves behind any value of calling someone out at all, and just becomes like I'm making my own image worse. Um, but yeah, so I was on these shows. I was a public figure. I stated my opinions pretty raw, especially earlier on, and that just ruffled feathers. So a lot of people's kind of like knee jerk response, looking in on who I am as a person, was some loudmouth, um, maybe from their perspective, overly critical or mean or bully type of a person, and that just really rubbed them the wrong way. And then they just kind of carried that with them for a long time. And that was back when the StarCraft scene was at its largest. So 2011, 12, 13. This is when the StarCraft scene was the biggest. So the most people, we'd do a state of the game and we'd have 10,000 people watching. We do our Christmas special. We have 20,000, 25,000 people watching. Like our podcast, our show back then was very big. And if a subject came up, I was the guy that made fun of it or was pretty harsh. And that's very divisive. It's polarizing. But that's not to say it's all external and just done to me. There definitely were situations where I handled it like shit. There's the Inside the Game incident with Destiny where we got him on there. He was a dick, but all three of us were giant dicks as well, and we come off as bad because it was our show. We invited him onto it, and there's three of us and one of him. So that was a really ugly situation, and I did not apologize at first. I made the issue even worse by pointing out that he was a giant dick. But when you're a part of a group of people that offend the minority or the individual, you should not try to justify that you were okay to push that person around. You should just fucking apologize, which was the lesson I learned there. But that carried around for a little while. And then there's been, I don't need to go down the line, but there's been other situations too where I've opened my mouth and said stupid shit, and it was taken very, very bad. And then back, 2012, 13 era, my first response was not to apologize. It was to try to defend and explain myself. And what I learned over the course of time is, especially as a public figure, people are not going to see the situation, the defense, and the explanation. They're not going to see all those incremental parts. There are some people who will see all that, but most people are only going to see disjointed moments in time where it's like, no, actually, I saw him be a dick, and now he's saying it's their fault. Oh, what an idiot! I hate him forever. I want to burn him. When instead, if they see, oh my God, he said that, and then the next thing they see is, I'm like, hey, I'm really sorry, that was unacceptable. I need to do better. I hope you can forgive me. Then they go, oh, okay, well, that is what he should do. That's how being in the public works. It's a very different beast. And I was in my early 20s and nobody had explained that to me. So I had to learn in the, cauldron of fire and flames that was the Wild West esports. And it was hard, and it definitely had to, it definitely had its dark moments there. But it was like the best training ever. Now I feel like I hope someday I can run like a military boot camp on how to be a public figure, and we'll make it a sitcom or a reality show or something. But now, my image, what you see, is still me, but it's like the me that's made for public. I have opinions and I have jokes that I make that are off air, as they should be. Because if you put that out there and someone just gets a knee-jerk response to that, they're going to think you're a racist bigot or they hate you forever type of thing. So it looks like I get a lot of hate. And like I said, it's because I'm a very public figure, and I did get a lot of hate. But in the last couple of years, it's really not that bad. I post on Reddit, and you'll have the one troll that'll say something like, you're fat. And then it's like, okay, I only get downvoted. And nobody cares. But it's not nearly as much, and I say that to be scientific. It's like literally 1% of the time this happens now. But I'll post, I'll say, hey man, that's awesome, or whatever, just talk about something. And it used to be there's these people that followed me around and said really bad things. Nope, not anymore. My channel, it's like known as the Twitch channel that bans a bunch of people in StarCraft, but honestly, we ban like one person every other day now, because it's just kind of the culture where it's like you come in and if you're like, you're fat, it's like, all right, you're banned. But for the most part, it doesn't happen anymore because it's just not that fun for people to do anymore. And there's not as much traction, so it doesn't go anywhere.
Well, that's good. I'm really glad to hear that. At the top of that, when you were talking about BlizzCon and how certain people didn't want you to be hired for that event because you were a bit of more of like a quote-unquote risky character that liked to joke around, etc., etc. It kind of made me think. I've been thinking for a little while that there's been this sort of shift in the culture of esports at its highest level. I think it's largely brought on by just esports being, much more, much larger than it once was. And I think Riot with the LCS and the broadcasting that they do, it's so professional, it's so clean. But it's almost, to me, it seems almost like too clean. It doesn't seem as fun as it once was. Do you find that there's been a shift in that kind of broadcasting culture where once DreamHack was all about fun and they'd play these stupid songs in the break and everything like that? Now it's much more polished, or etc., so on and so forth. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think as a general statement across the board, sure. I think the stakes are higher. Esports has never been as diversified as it is now, too. And diversified oftentimes has a connotation of positivity, and it certainly does in this context as well, but it also carries with it kind of the hidden meaning, which is that it's more carnivorous and aggressive and competitive than it's ever been. DreamHack, when it was running those goofy fun events, it was like StarCraft, and there was some other games going on, but that was the game. And if you didn't like the jokes, too bad. That's the style they bring. Now, inside of each esports scene, there's several big events, but perhaps even more on the radar is that there's a CS:GO event, there's a LoL event, there's a Dota event, there's a Overwatch event. Like there's these other games that are also trying to make their big image go as mainstream as possible to grab those sponsors and to grab those eyes. Back in the day, it was you were just watching StarCraft, man. If you were watching esports, you were mostly just watching StarCraft, and that was okay and that was awesome. So you had a little bit more freedom to do that because sponsors wanted to get on this bandwagon. They didn't care if you dropped a couple of F bombs as much, but now they have choices. Now they have options. Now there's not one big esport. There's like three or four. And then after those three or four, there's actually some other very viable options that your money can put eyes on. Um, and in that climate, in that world, things are becoming more professional. There's still pretty good and goofy content out there, but I absolutely agree with you. For the most part, across the board, things have become much more straight laced, much more serious. There's a lot of people that are going to miss the old times, but for the most part, this is completely natural and completely normal. What's nice is that while this is going to become the mainstay, while everyone's clamoring to be number one and kind of grab those primary big sponsorships, the natural evolution is again, it's somebody is going to be like, well, let's come up with the original idea to have a little bit more loose and a silly broadcast, and then it'll be like, oh my God, you're set apart from everybody else, and that's going to be what gets all the attention, and then everyone else is going to have their own mutated version of that, and then it's going to become the norm, and then it's going to go away, go back to professionalism, and back and forth we go, and that's kind of the evolution of production based business and content, I find.
Just want to be clear for a second because I think when I asked that question by like, oh, is esports less fun now than it was? That's not really what I meant. I think I like your word straight laced there, just a shift
Yeah.
to become more straight laced. I just want to be clear on that. When I interviewed Lycan last week there, he mentioned at one point that he's not really sure what you actually think of him. So, what do you think of Lycan? This is the follow up 1 week later.
He's funny. There's actually a lot of people that say that they're a little put off by me because I end up being like kind of serious and short worded with a lot of people. Kind of just depends on what capacity people are speaking and interacting with me. I don't dislike anyone really or anything like that. It's just like I'm often doing my day is like blocked and spoken for pretty much the entire time. I know it just appears that I just float around and do nothing and play video games whenever I want, but it's like, nah, I'm doing like 5 calls, 3 meetings, streaming, which is the play video games part, I guess, and then spend time with wife and all that stuff. So I'm actually like pretty tired usually, just because I keep so busy. But yeah, he's funny. I think Lycan's an interesting example. He's like he's kind of like the new age esports guy where like they were not a part of the scene for 10 years. They did not like really sweat it out and bleed it out, and finally made it or something like that. He is a good example, by the way, of someone that just wants to fucking do it, just really wants to do it. He's been asking people. He's been turning in. He'll message people and be like, "Hey, do you need a commentator? Do you need a host? Do you need an interviewer? I'll do it for free. I'll fly myself out." Like he's like pushing himself on people, and I respect that. I think that's really cool because, like I said earlier, like that's what you got to do. That's one of the main ways to try and get anywhere in esports is you got to ask the uncomfortable questions. You got to look people in the eye and be willing to hear them explain that they think you're nothing. It's like terrible, but it is what it takes. So I respect him for that, and I think that's awesome. Um, I thought, how do I word this? It's like when he started his show, I thought it was a very tough time to do a show in StarCraft. And if you're gonna do a show in StarCraft, it has to be really good, and that really good show will get very mediocre viewership. I don't think he did a really good show, and there was just I think the reason why he thinks I would think anything less of him is just like I just straight up told him a few times that he's got to do a better job, and that's hard to tell another person. But I honestly, as I've said, I've been around esports since the beginning. Basically, I've learned that that's the best thing to do for people is just to tell them if they need to do a better job, just tell them. And I didn't do it mean, or I don't. There's no reason to do it mean. It's just that you don't beat around the bush and be like, man, gee willikers, if only if only we could just somehow do better. It's like, no, you just look at them and say, hey, man, you have the guests lined up. You got to advertise this. You got to have clear points here, and you got to hit it. You got to actually really want it for it to be anything. And ultimately, I hope that advice sinks in as it goes on, because Lycan doesn't seem to want to go anywhere. He wants to keep making content and keep working, which is I think really cool. And the scene needs StarCraft, but also just gaming in general. Um, like I said, there's so many people that are like, I want to do it, and then they get in there, they don't get paid anything, they get told no a bunch, nothing happens. There's 5 people watching their shit, and then they go away after 3 months, and that's 99% of the people. It's the people that fight for those 5 eyes, or 5 people with eyes, then 10, then 15, then 20, and then nothing happens for 6 months, and then finally they get 40, and then someone hosts them, and they get 200, and then that's how it starts to happen, like that kind of stuff. But it takes so much tenacity. It's not for everyone. And I think so far Lycan has proven to be one of those people with that tenacity. So I hope he keeps going.
The other day, you tweeted, quote, stressed about the future in today's stream really lifted me up. Thanks to everyone who was a part of that, end quote. If this is something that you're comfortable talking about, and it's fine if you're not, obviously, what is it about your future that you're thinking about, stressed out about? What's on the go?
It's more just the fear of the unknown, or like just impending very big change. The CEO and founder of Evil Geniuses, Alex Garfield, left, and I can't really say why. That's for him or other people to describe and talk about. But with that, there's definitely a gigantic shift in the company that's happening, and a lot of that's not being explained to me at all, which is perhaps okay, perhaps it's really bad. I don't know, and that's part of my unsettling feeling. Um, this all comes from a background of like almost everyone else. When I was a kid, my parents had a really bad divorce. Just it was not okay. My mom's, anyways, don't need to go into super big details, but just not okay. There's no mega horror story here, and there's going to be 100 people that watch this that have way worse stories than me. But the point is, I came from a background where we moved between the ages of 12 and 18 like 7 or 8 times, and it was always because the bank was claiming our house, or we were renting a place that then went into foreclosure and stuff like that. It was really bad. So to a core, it's instilled in me very strongly. I want stability. I want to know that I'm going to be okay. That's one of the most important things in my entire existence to me right now, and it's because of that background. So when my job of the last 7 years is in a state of flux and in question there, I'm just uncomfortable. I'm very uncomfortable. But even beyond that, I've been a pro gamer, or I've been, working with this company as a pro gamer my adult life. Before that, I was working at Jamba Juice, GameStop, and a pizza place, your very stereotypical college and high school jobs. This has been what I've done to put my footing and grounding down in what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And kind of unique to it, obviously there's other jobs with the same problem, but esports in particular is rife with this. There's always this impending doom moment over your head as an esports person. Like, yeah, but what if a company just loses value in you? What if people stop watching your stream? What if your game goes away? What if, all these things that you don't have any control over? So I've worked really hard to be a fixture where I'm at and to have good connections and to be taken care of and paid well. And that's just for for one of the first times it's unsettled. Now, the nice thing is it's September as I speak these words, and I am contracted through December. So unless somebody goes absolutely ham on my life and severs those ties, I'm good until then. And then at that point in time, Anna's helped me put. She's like, I say Anna's helped me because she's actually like a corporate monster, so good at her job type of person. She helped me put together an application or a resume that we're gonna float around to a couple of key spots that I really want. And all of this is also just because I have maybe EG like after this, they messed with me like, Jeff, we're paying you $1 million for 10 years. I'm like, oh wow, okay, thanks guys. They're not paying me that, by the way. But maybe it's a cool message. I don't know. We'll see. The point is, it's just the unknown, which is stressful, and it's a very strong chance that I'm going to have a big change coming up from being a professional gamer to still in gaming, hopefully, but probably reporting to someone and sitting at a desk or making content for someone or something. Then there's the other option, which is just that I stream and I get a bunch of sponsors and commentate and do content, which would be really fun too. But also, you become a slave to your stream, which is really tough, but also a great lifestyle.
Before we did this interview, I asked you how comfortable you were talking about the Evil Geniuses Good Game Agency stuff, and you said that there's not a whole lot that you can say, and that you don't really know either. And I want to be respectful of that, and I understand that completely. But I also think I would probably get some heat for not asking some of the tougher questions, I guess. And not undeservedly so, because it's a big story, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So really, really briefly, if you can say anything, that's cool. If you can't, that's fine too. With Good Game being absorbed into Twitch, and obviously Alex Garfield's departure, who's currently at the helm of EG, if you can say so?
I don't know.
Cool. And you just mentioned, Alex, you don't want to talk about why he left, and that's his reasons.
I can't.
It's understandable. Yeah, understandable.
Yeah. Legally, I can't.
Yeah. EG's SC2 division has been a little sparse lately. J-Dog's been kind of MIA for the majority of 2016. Lately, it's been rumored one way or another whether or not he's playing Brood War again. Huck is kind of implying that he's going to move to the Overwatch scene. That would make you really the last person on the StarCraft roster for EG. I don't really expect anything for this, but do you think Evil Geniuses would be interested in picking up new talent? Obviously, this is such a time of flux that it can't be a priority in anyone's mind. But
no, I think the sad thing is, it's sad but understandable. EG's always been more business minded than anything else. They've kept a lot of people on, and I think it's a different mindset, but a lot of people don't really give that the appreciation they should. Like, they still paid Suppy, they still paid Xenocider, and those guys have not competed or done anything in forever. They very recently did a couple of things and streamed a little bit, but they just support them because they fucking love those guys. Suppy's busy becoming a doctor, and Xenocider's a overachieving high school student going into college fairly soon, I believe. I think this is his last year of high school, or maybe it's his first year at college. I think it's first year at college. And I think that's amazing. I really don't know what's going on with Jaedong. That's a Korean thing that's happening there. We're friends and we talk, but I don't try to ask him. I don't try to bother him, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So what I've known for a while is that Jaedong has been very tired of pro gaming. He came from the Kespa scene that ruled his life for a long time. He did not have a say in where he was going, who he was playing for, when he was playing, when he was training, any of that. And of course, there's a huge part of him, especially earlier on, that loved it because he was one of the absolute best, and that's why he got into the whole thing, and he was paid very well. But by the time I knew him in StarCraft 2, he still had some fun and pleasure in StarCraft 2, but he was also, for the first time in his life, enjoying going out and running, getting a nice breakfast, hanging out with his brother, being a human being, basically. Um, which sounds dire, but it actually is like that. So I, whenever people were like, what's going on with Jedi? Tell me what's going on with Jedi. Or like there'd be comments like, man, EG made him shitty and stuff like that. Like I would especially just be like, God, if people only knew what they were doing, like it felt very gladiatorial. Like they loved him with all their heart, but their love was pushing him towards his own destruction. That Jaedong obviously is wise enough not to do himself. Like they would literally want him strapped to a computer, siphoning off his soul forever, as long as he's microing those Milos really well. And there was definitely a time for that, like I said. But Jaedong was beyond that. He was just like, nah. He like felt so deeply ashamed when he would lose because he wanted to still win. That's a huge part of who he is, and he wants to make his fans happy. But he also is just so fucking tired of playing games for 15 hours a day and not experiencing life. So I imagine that's what he's doing right now. But I'm not gonna bother him, or like I'm not gonna add any anxiety to him by being like, hey, what's going on, or anything like that, because I honestly feel like I know what's happening, and what's happening is he's moving on and becoming a human being, and I think that's pretty cool. Um, but no, EG's not hired anyone in StarCraft 2 for a while. Our division's essentially dead. Huck is transitioning to Overwatch, but if you ask him, he'll tell you he's still a StarCraft 2 programmer, and that's because that's how he makes his money right now. But he's very good at both. He won the Montreal bring your own computer event at the event. And then I don't know anything about his Overwatch prowess, but he's just a talented gamer, so I'm assuming he's doing pretty well at that as well. And people like his commentary, it would seem. He did a couple events of that. So I have all the faith in the world that Huck's gonna find a way and be okay and do great. But no, the StarCraft 2 division's essentially dead. I haven't competed in a few years. Xenocider, like I said, has moved on. Suppy's moved on. Jaedong's moving on. Huck's transitioning. And then that is everyone. And I start off by saying I think it's really cool that EG supported everyone as long as they do, and I wish more people kind of knew that. StarCraft, it's everyone that's going to hear this or reads the Reddit and stuff like that. It's all of our favorite game. It's what we watch. It's what we grew up with. And then there's going to be a lot of people that see this that don't watch StarCraft anymore, but did watch StarCraft. That's a part of their background, and that's really cool too. But it is not big enough, and it does not garner enough interest to pay everyone anymore. It just doesn't. So EG, signing new players and throwing them around at tournaments and putting them in the WCS system doesn't make any sense for them. And actually, it makes sense for very few companies. It's really cool that Team Liquid continues to pay those guys and has a fairly large top notch StarCraft 2 team, because there are not many teams right now, and I say that to be fair. It's like 2 teams that have more than like 4 paid pro gamers that are collecting a salary that you can live off of. It's like very few teams. There's just kind of individuals out there that have earned a living for themselves as like the sole representative of their team, or one of 2 people, or they're sponsored or something like that. But it's just a very different scene right now. And that's okay. That's the natural progression of games. Hopefully in a few years when StarCraft 3 comes out or something like that, it gets reinvigorated. We learn from what happened with StarCraft 2, and there's a whole other golden era of the best fucking RTS of all time being in the spotlight for another 5 or 6 years, But it happens. LoL and Dota 2, they are the biggest. They're 2 of the biggest. CSGO's way up there as well. But guess what? Those eyes are being shared. They're moving on. They're kind of stagnating. It's one of the issues they're talking about in the LCS, how less people are watching it. Dota 2 International not getting the 1.5 million eyes that it did only a year before. Is it a dead game? Is it a dying game? Of course not. It's a very healthy, extremely vibrant game. But the natural lifespan of games is actually a real thing. And it's just, we're very lucky that StarCraft has come out in 1998 and we're still fucking talking about it in 2016. That's crazy. I've been playing this game longer than a lot of people that'll watch this video have been alive. What?
At various different points, you've mentioned that you'd be interested in casting like other games, not just StarCraft 2. What kind of games did you have your eye on? And second to that, second part of this question, we've seen a lot of different pros and personalities kind of quote unquote jump ship, which probably isn't the right term, through the years, going to LOL and Heroes was the big one, and Overwatch, etc. Do you ever regret not taking that path where you left in 2014, let's say?
No. Just my personal outlook. I'm not saying this is better or worse than anybody else's, but my personal outlook on esports is just that it's a vehicle that provides an opportunity for someone to do exactly what they want. And if they're lucky, they can get paid to do that and make a living off of that. So commentating, I absolutely love, and that sure is way up there. I would commentate a boring game just because I like commentating, but I wouldn't love commentating a boring game. But I'm getting away from my point. My point is, I actually am still doing StarCraft, not because I have to, but because I really love it. I love going to BlizzCon. I love going to Sweden. I love going to Austin, Texas to do a DreamHack there. Like these, I love sitting next to Rotterdam and Nathanius and meeting with my longtime friends Artosis and Tasteless. And, I actually really like the legacy of StarCraft. When someone comes up and has been like, "Hey, I've been watching you for almost 10 years," it's like that's a special thing. I really like that. So um, the reason I say that is because I would never look at a game and be like, I target this game, I'm moving into it now. That's not how I work. I'm in StarCraft because this is in my blood. I play a bunch of CS:GO. I play a bunch of Warhammer. So when, in those things, like if someone comes up to me, or like this weekend, I'm going to be at the Dawn of War 3 booth. I'm not targeting Dawn of War 3. Maybe it's not a great game, but because of my StarCraft success and because of my love for Warhammer, they've reached out to me. And who knows? Maybe that's a fucking amazing game. In which case, if I really love it, then yeah, I'd definitely commentate. I'd play it and stuff like that. But I don't target games. I just if someone wants to pay me to talk about their game because I really love it, they can. I'll do it. I'd love to commentate some CS:GO, but they have an incredible commentating scene and a gigantic game, and maybe someone someday will give me a chance, and maybe I'll turn heads, or maybe I won't. But that's just kind of my philosophy and how I do it.
But you have said that you would like to cast other games.
Absolutely.
What's your like short list?
I mean, so yeah, I guess in like a perfect world, if I could commentate them, CS:GO, love it, absolutely love it. Been playing it since 1.6. I have a tremendous respect for the skill it takes to play that game, so that'd be really fun. Um, and then there's games like, I mean, it's just like CS:GO right now, but like, yeah, I mean, if I think I love Dota, but I don't play any of it at all. I'm a firm believer that you have to play the game that you commentate. Um, I don't think that's as outlandish of an opinion as it is for some people. There are commentators that don't play the game they commentate, and I think that's just bonkers to me. Um, yeah, it would just be like CS:GO right now, but like who knows? In a dream world, like, let's say Dawn of War 3 is awesome. I'd love to commentate Dawn of War 3. That'd be so cool.
Right now, in 2016, in WCS 2016, there are lots of complaints that the Korean scene isn't receiving enough support and that the WCS system is heavily tipped in favor of the foreign scene. Is there a part of you, that old Brewbor player who looks at that and thinks, my God, this is insane, you never expected this?
Uh, I mean, crazy in the sense that it used to be all about Korea back in Brewer. Yeah, sure, I guess so. Um, as far as like the scene now, it's just it's not that crazy to me, and people aren't that far off from wishing more for the Koreans. I just it's interesting to me because I would have people know more than I guess is safe to tell people. Like when they're planning WCS and stuff like that, they're not like vilifying the Koreans and being like we hate them or something like that. They want to spread what they have around as best as they can. And the scene a couple of years ago was Koreans having a very good scene in Korea, and then select Koreans traveling out and also taking the foreign scene with them as well. They were placing top two or three at every single tournament, and that was not sustainable. Viewership was partially on the decline because of just how kind of bland that was for the most part. You're at the mercy of if you didn't have a superstar that could stand up to the Koreans, like we've had a few of over the years, then you just you just saw Koreans fight Koreans and at every single event. But even beyond that, it wasn't just the Koreans winning; it was that it was becoming harder to sign foreigners. More Koreans were getting signed to teams, and it was starting to squelch and get to a very dangerous spot for the foreigner scene. And growth was stagnating significantly. It's not entirely the Koreans' fault, obviously, but that was it was one of the problems that was identified in this way. And then what I guess a lot of people don't know, and I feel pretty comfortable saying this, but like uh, a lot of the partners, the events, went to Blizzard in 2015 and 16 and said, if you don't change the way things are going, we're not going to run StarCraft anymore. Like, it's not worth it for us. We have other sponsors that are saying like, hey, here's the money we'll give you, and I don't need any of that to go towards StarCraft because that's not what we care about. And then those partners would be like, well, we want to run StarCraft, so some of that has to go towards them. They'd be like, I mean, I guess, but if you do it again after this event, like, we're gonna, contractually specify what we want our money to go towards. So it's getting to like as early as last year, if things didn't change drastically, we were going to have no more events. I'm not going to name names, but you only have like 2 or 3 events to wonder what I'm talking about, and it was pretty much all of them. So these big changes had to come in, and these changes were a mixture of ideas from those partners, but then also from Blizzard itself. The ideas have been more or less successful, not as successful, I'm sure, as everyone would hope. But the change was needed, and the change did happen, and those events are going to keep running StarCraft at least for a little while longer. 2016, we'll have to see. I haven't heard anything, but it literally is at that point where if you don't make a big change, stuff will start going away pretty hardcore. And I think that's jarring to a lot of people. I think a lot of people on Reddit don't think big picture, and they certainly don't know these details. And that's what makes it so painful. Like, there's been a couple of times where like Apollo and some of these guys have said stuff on Reddit, and they got the In Control treatment of 2012, where like people messaged them and said, you lied, and how, you just want money, and how dare you, like, that's a terrible idea, you're an idiot. And like, it's hard to sit back and watch, but I've also become fairly complacent because I spent years on all the biggest shows and as big a platforms as you can get in StarCraft, saying, look guys, the negativity and the relentless criticism actually is hurting the scene, and people just never listened, or not enough people did anyways. I know of sponsors, I know of teams, I know of important people that literally remove themselves from StarCraft in particular because no matter what they did, it was just destroyed by the public. And there's talent inside of StarCraft right now. Why is Apollo not doing as much in the public eye? I don't know. That's for a number of reasons, but I can tell you one of them is because he, like a lot of people, are just tired of it not amounting to much, just getting yelled at and being shot down. He's one of the idea guys now at ESL, and a lot of those ideas that people are saying they hate with all their heart are his ideas. So it just kills motivation for a lot of people, especially when they have those same ideas be met with love and joy in other scenes, and then it's like turn around and it's like really nice viewership and it's awesome. That 1-2 punch is what kills the passion in a lot of StarCraft people, and that's going on, and it has been for years.
One of the things that I've recently taken an interest in is the concept of a very, very big divide between like the casual viewing audience and the hardcores. My favorite statistic in the past couple of months is the idea that on the Friday or whatever it was for DreamHack Valencia, there were 40,000 concurrent viewers at the one time, and 20,000 people visited our StarCraft for the whole day. Do you personally think that it's only a very small minority of people who are really loud that do the kind of things that would force like an Apollo to be more withdrawn or force sponsors out or anything like that? Or do you think it's more of a cultural thing within the StarCraft community in particular?
Yeah, I mean that's why it's such a wild beast, and that's why you can preach at it as much as you want, and it'll affect some people, but it overall is like very tough to turn a ship around in this case. It is not the majority of people for sure. Um, People love saying the vocal minority, and I do think it is the vocal minority. But when that vocal minority is not silenced, or they are met with legitimacy. Like people are like, yeah, and like that opinion does surface to the top and is present. Um, it becomes a reality, and that's the nastiness. Um, I'll tell you though, over the years, like that same attitude and like that event happens in LoL and Dota and all that stuff, and like um, that is it's a sad thing to say, but it's like yes, that happens in other games, but when your game's big enough, it can survive and weather that storm and be just fine. People are going to be people online are for whatever reason anonymity makes human beings largely in part gigantic douchebags. Like they will say bad stuff because they had a bad day, or maybe not. Maybe they didn't even have a bad day. They just get some weird pleasure out of seeing you squirm a little bit. That's in Dota, that's in CS:GO, that's in LoL, and that's in StarCraft too. But when your game's on the decline and those negative messages are gaining more traction because there's less positives that are being said, and there's less people saying the positives, then all of a sudden that vocal minority becomes the only people speaking, and that is the atmosphere, that is the climate. So yeah, we had all this negativity in 2010, 2011, 2012, but you'll notice it didn't have that big of an impact because we were busy crushing it on stream and having a great time. But in 2013, 14, 15, and onward, when viewership's on the decline and people are being cut, people are retiring, less events are happening, MLG's not doing StarCraft 2 anymore, that kind of stuff is starting to happen. All of a sudden, those negative messages gain more traction, and there's more people saying negative stuff because they have more negative things to say, and then that pushes out the last remnants. So they are not the cause. They are not the catalyst. They didn't even start it. They're just a constant thing that happens. And then as you're on the ground, they just still are happening. And it gets worse because you're not strong enough to handle it at that time. Um, and that's kind of the scary and worst part. But that's also where StarCraft could hopefully be some form of a lesson for other games as well. Like when you're in your boom and you're killing it, and you've got millions of people watching your game, I hope there's advocates and I hope there's leagues and I hope there's an atmosphere of like, hey, be critical, have things to say, and there will be dicks, but let's do what we can to not give them traction and talk about making it more conducive. Like Dota's a really trolly scene. And there is some negativity, but if you go to the Reddit, and it's a big game right now, it's not threads calling out people and saying I fucking hate them. Does that happen, by the way? Yes, it does. But for the most part, most of their content is very supportive, very positive, very jokey, very trolly. They're doing a pretty good job of that, and that's in part because Dota's had a scene that's been around forever too. So I think they've like absorbed a lot of that negativity and made it a part of their identity actually. But it works for them. So, and I can't wait. This is the part of the video. This is one of the 15 parts, by the way, where someone's like, "Nope, he's wrong. Every scene I come from such and such scene. It's more negative, and they're doing great." It's like, all right, you know better than me, right? Right? Okay, let's move on.
You mentioned this a little bit earlier. Like you're a busy guy. You've got a lot going on, and a lot of it happens off stream, off screen that people don't know about, meetings and such, so forth. How do you stay on top of everything that happens in the community and in esports? I mean, it's not even just StarCraft that you follow. How do you stay on top of the Korean metagame and on top of Dota and everything? Where do you find the time?
Ugh, I don't really know. I mean, I don't play any Dota, so I just watch it, and I don't watch all the Dota. I watch like the international and if EG is doing well, and EG is like imploding as we speak now anyway on a Dota level. So who knows? But um, finding a time, I actually don't need a lot of sleep. I stay up usually every night until 1 or 2 a.m. And then I wake up at about 7 or 8, and that seems to be enough for me. Obviously, you heard me earlier say I'm tired a lot, so that's probably part of it. But that's where I find a lot of the time.
So just literally extending your day to the extreme, huh?
Yep.
That's pretty rough. What do you think about the big changes that Blizzard announced for StarCraft at WCS Summer? It feels to me almost like they're giving us a fresh, entirely new expansion pack. What do you think about what's coming?
Yeah, I love the idea that they're as committed to continuing to make that game something to look forward to and big changes, new units, huge changes and stuff like that. That's not something that was promised or guaranteed, and the fact that we have that to kind of look forward to is really cool to me. I mean, I just have nothing but good things to say about it. It's just good.
Is there a point? This is probably my favorite question to ask people. Is there a point where you sat back and you thought to yourself, "Yes, I am a big deal now. I've made it." Is there a time when you just thought, "This is good. This is just where I'm at right now is really good."
Yeah, yeah. I kind of I don't know when it happened, but certainly a year or two ago, I definitely made a concerted effort to look around and just be thankful is the big word for me here. Like I said earlier, I put a lot of work into this, and I don't feel like I'm out of place. I feel like I am where I put myself. Um, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that put in as much or more work than me and got a lot less. So there's something to be said for being in the right place, at the right time, being lucky, um, stars aligning, what have you. It's just I think it's a very sad state to go through life if you don't recognize that you do have it good. If you do, and I think you owe it to everyone else to be appreciative of that, and then work towards making it accessible for other people. And that's, like I said, that would be my complete mission statement. So I said earlier the part about making it accessible for other people, but the other part of that is being thankful that I'm um, a fixture in the game that I love, and I'm a part of a scene that I feel very passionately about. Because there's a lot of people that aren't, and it's not guaranteed.
You spoke a fair bit earlier about the state of StarCraft and the outlook for StarCraft. Do you believe now in 2016 that this is still a community and an esport where people can make a career on the back of? Or do you think that that time has passed and it's now the job of other games to develop people who are mainstays in esports?
Oh no, StarCraft is it's still, like I said, it has a pro gaming scene, it has a professional casting scene. You can absolutely make a career in it. It just gets harder over time because there's less people paying money in that direction. But absolutely, you can. And I think some of the best talent in all of gaming in general has come from StarCraft, or a lot of the talent in other games talked about how they grew up watching StarCraft people do their thing, and how, or you can look at some of these games and they were minor characters in StarCraft. The two most prominent casters in CS:GO, Semler, he was like the butt of all the jokes at the Good Studio House, and now he is one of people call him. They call him and Anders, the Tasteosis of CS:GO. Tasteosis is our StarCraft 2 commentators. Like, we have a very cool and proud legacy, and you can still make a career in this, but there's a lot to be proud of as well. I think it's really awesome.
Jumping off the back of that, what advice would you give to anyone trying to work their way up through the esports scene and through the StarCraft scene right now to achieve that success?
Ask the hard questions. You're going to be told no, but you got to plow through it, have passion, and keep fighting.
Out of everyone that you've worked with, you've hosted so many events, you've been a part of so many different tournaments from day one of StarCraft 2 and even in StarCraft Brood War. Out of everyone that you've worked with, who's your short list of like your favorite people?
Favorite people to work with?
Yes.
I mean, it's gonna be a lot of the usual suspects. Tasteosis. I've been friends with them since 2003 or two, and we, like I said, Artosis and I in particular would like go to events and sleep on people's floors. When they were commentating at BlizzCon for Brood War, I would sleep on their floor, and then I would sneak into BlizzCon with their badge. It's a story we told at BlizzCon. Mike Morheim and Amy Morheim told me that I owe them money. So that was funny. But they're just really actual gems of people, and they're like-minded. They just fucking love StarCraft. They love it a lot, and that's where I come from as well. So we get along very well that way. Um, Kevin is one of the Rotterdam is one of the most like honest and awesome people you'll actually ever meet. He is a lot like myself in that way. When you watch his stream, that's not a scene, that's not an act, that's him. So you can kind of really get to know him, and I really respect that. And he conducts himself that way all the time. If you say something he disagrees with on air or at the event, he will tell you he disagrees and he'll explain himself. If you say a funny joke, he will laugh himself until he's sick and fall out of his chair. Just a really good guy that way. And then Nathanius, like I said, I really respect his passion and just what he's done to get where he's at in life and in career. But also an extremely funny guy. Really funny guy. And then after that, there's some cool other people too, like Mikhail at ESL, or Carmack as people know him. He's been around since the Brood War days as well. He came up as an interviewer actually, and is now one of the biggest guys at ESL. I mean, that's an awesome story. He has a lovely family that he's moved around the world doing esports. You just have to like that passion. Um, and then other people, Apollo is way up there as well. I used to stay with him at the Good Studio, and he's just a rock solid, good guy. Willing to joke around and stuff like that too, but obviously he's more of a business minded and serious esports person, which I really respect and appreciate as well because I have that streak in me as well. Um, and then like other people out there like Day9. Day9 is just a relentlessly optimistic guy. I think that's what a lot of people know him for. But also as a friend, he's one of the few guys that'll be like, "How are you doing?" And he'll be like, and he'll be like, "No, how are you really doing?" He's like one of the people that'll actually ask that kind of question. Um, Too good out there. People know us for our banter, but I've had some really awesome moments with him too, and he's a deeply passionate person about gaming, like deeply fucking passionate about it. And he's one of the smartest guys I know in the esports scene, but also not very good at doing work himself. Well, non-idea work. Let's put it that way. When it comes to execution, he needs other people around him. And there's a bunch of others I'm sure I'm forgetting, and I do apologize. But like, yeah, those are some of the names that leap out at me.
So that's it. That's all I had. Is there anything that you wanted to say? Is there anything shout outs you
Oh,
want
and
to make?
Total
Anything like
Biscuit, by the
that?
way, I have to put that out there. I love
Oh,
commentating Total Biscuit. I also like that when I hang out with him, he will tell me when people he's like my TM. This is gonna sound weird, but he's my TMZ of esports. So he'll be like, "Oh, such and such is a fucking idiot," and then we'll talk about that for a minute, which is fun. Sorry, what were you saying?
yeah. Wrap up. Do you have anything that you wanted to mention, talk about, or do you have any shout outs that you want to make?
No, just it's cool that you're doing this. I love talking about gaming. Obviously, I'll talk about it with anyone, and apparently forever. Shout out wise, just I feel like I covered a lot of stuff, but just all the people that helped me get here and have made my story interesting. Just thank you to all of them. It's been great.